Ole Miss upsetting the Georgia Bulldogs? It's on Vegas's mind right now. Seriously.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're diving into the Ole Miss Rebels' big matchup against the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart. It's one of the most talked about games of the weekend, and Vegas is kind of behaving strangely here. Nearly 90% of the bets and money are on the Georgia Bulldogs, yet the line is not moving. It is still 2.5 points. Are they begging for more Bulldogs bets? What do they know? We'll break it all the factors down, from the weather conditions to how Carson Beck's mindset could impact the game. We're joined by Clint Shamblin from Locked On Bulldogs to get the Georgia perspective on the showdown. We are free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. And a special thank you to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. Don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC and Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They offer great perspectives on the college football, SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss. So check them out. You can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. This is one of the major games of the weekend, the Ole Miss Rebels versus the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia's coming into town. I can remember going with my father to see the Reed Hines game in 1989, and I was there with my uncle to catch the Cassius B. Ware game in 1993. I think that game also was the one that Peyton Manning was on a game visit to the game as well. I remember that quite well because everybody was paying attention to him and then nobody else. It was kind of interesting. But this Georgia game has always been kind of special to me. I talked about it on the podcast earlier in the week. I've enjoyed it. I like the way the fan bases interact. I like the fight music that Georgia plays. I like the experience of an Ole Miss versus Georgia game. That's just always the way it was. Last year I was very excited about the game because Ole Miss had one loss going into it. They'd lost to Alabama, and you got to Georgia, and Georgia just bludgeoned them. It was 52-17, and it wasn't particularly close. Now, a lot of people are going to look at that game and what happened to that game and just automatically roll it forward to the next year as if these are not two completely different teams. McConkey and Brock Bowers is not walking through the door for that Georgia offense. And the Georgia defense isn't quite as stout as it's been in years past. Now, when Georgia plays its best, there's not really a whole lot that anybody can do against them. The top of their bell curve is higher than everybody else. But if you can get that top to come down just a little bit to where your top is there, you can get them. And this is a gettable Georgia Bulldogs team. I do think, and I'm going to explain this to Clint Shamblin, that I think Georgia's game that they had last year against Ole Miss happened in the Texas game. That was them putting it all together. I think Ole Miss is going to get a version of what Missouri got a year ago, except this is going to be on the road. You have Tennessee. That's going to be another game that they're up for because of the number beside Tennessee's name. I think Ole Miss has a position, and all the intangibles that I've talked about, Lane Kiffin and Jaxson Dart needing it for legacy, this Vegas situation, which is absolutely bonkers. Ole Miss's favorite is a 2.5-point underdog to the Georgia Bulldogs, and 90% of the bets and money is on the Georgia Bulldogs. That line should be 3, 4, 5 points at this point. It is not moving. And that means something. I'm not sure what, but it means something. Anyway, let's go inside Thunderdome with Clint Shamblin from Locked On Bulldogs. Let's go. We are in Thunderdome. Clint Shamblin of Locked On Bulldogs is nice enough to join us. Daniel Monroe is unfortunately unable to be here, but maybe next year because we're in a weird 3-year cycle where Ole Miss and Georgia play every year. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Clint, I was sitting here looking at this Vegas line. I've been poring over it all week. It's the nuttiest thing. Georgia is favored by 2.5 points, as they have been since Sunday. But if you look at the actual stats on it, nearly 90% of the bets and 90% of the money is on the Georgia Bulldogs, and the line is not moving. That is inviting more Georgia bets. It feels like they're banking money, but this line should be up to 7 or 8 points at this point.
Yeah, Vegas saying, hey, come on in, the water's fine, let's keep this flow of cash. It does give me pause. We check out the lines constantly. And so they have tall buildings in Vegas for a reason, and they keep on accepting cash at 2.5, and it hasn't moved, which, Georgia fan, this just in case you don't follow betting, you don't care about any of that, that should give you pause for concern. What Vegas wants to do is move the line up because they want to say, well, if all this cash are going to come in, and if the public thinks that Georgia's going to win or cover the 2.5, win by 3 or more, we're going to move it back so that we can hedge our bets and we can get more people in on the action. And the fact that they're not tells me that Vegas believes they have actually Georgia should be maybe in their mind 1.5, 1 point, or a pick'em game, and they're going to give you the 2.5 to tempt you into the water to keep you there. It's crazy to me. It gives me pause as a Georgia fan. Line like this hasn't changed. Even the Alabama and the Texas game, the line changed. Not here though, Steven, which is bananas.
Listen, in the LSU game for Ole Miss, they did the same thing. Ole Miss was favored by 2.5, 3 points, and the line just did not move over the course of the week. And it's like Vegas knew something. LSU ended up winning that game in overtime. So we'll see how it goes. It might be the weather this weekend, honestly. The weather forecast updated. It is now an 80% chance of rain at game time. It is going to be about 72 degrees. It doesn't look like it's going to be too windy. So that's a blessing in disguise. But this is going to be a weather game, and I think Vegas might be worried about Carson Beck with the confidence because he's only human throwing the interceptions. You're going to think about that and having a wet football. There's obviously going to be some pause. Maybe Vegas thinks the rain plus Carson Beck means turnovers.
Yeah, if you look at what he did last week at Florida, it was wild because when he threw the interceptions, he came back out and it was clearly in his head because he refused to throw the football for 3 drives, Steven. It was in his head. It's not an arm issue. It's an in between the ears issue. And when he doesn't feel confident, he refuses to throw. And then he started getting into a rhythm when he was just checking down and taking the underneath. He wasn't taking shots. And the offense worked fine. Again, we have more points per game when Carson Beck throws interceptions than when he doesn't, meaning the offense is cooking. It's going just fine when he's taking shots. And so you're not going to, that's a recipe for disaster. I'm not saying throw interceptions, get more points because you'll lose games that way. What I'm saying is this offense can cook. And I think you're right. I anticipate Georgia, if we had healthy running backs, which is a question mark that we still don't have an answer on. And this just in, Kirby Smart will not update you. I don't know how Lane handles the injury question.
Same thing.
Great. It's comical. We have a guy, Chip Towers, always asks the same question every single week, and Kirby has an answer. If we needed him to go, he would have come back in the game on Saturday, and he's progressing. That's his standard line, and every single person knows it. So we won't know until game time. Nobody will know until game time. That's a question mark. But Carson Beck to the left on first down. If Carson Beck's on first down throwing to his left, it's almost a guaranteed interception. The statistics show us. If he's able to do a check down, it works. And on play action, Carson Beck is the best quarterback, the best quarterback in college football on play action. The run game is there. We can play action. He can read over the middle. Things change. If he's forcing it down the field on first down, it's pick city, especially with rain, slippery ball. I don't know if you've heard this. Wide receivers at Georgia have a historic drop rate. Water and on the ball and on the gloves should fix all of that too, right, Georgia fan? No, it's going to be worse. I anticipate a sloppy passing game because of the mental and the drops of the wide receivers, which clearly favors Ole Miss in this game because I think, if I understand, Jaxson Dart is fine in this type of weather, Steven.
Yeah, he went in 2022, Ole Miss ended up actually losing this game, but he had a game against Mississippi State where he was 30 for 40 for 350 yards in a monsoon and led a 99-yard drive to score what would have been the tying touchdown if they would have got the 2-point conversion. It was kind of the arrival moment for Jaxson Dart to let everybody know. It's like, hey, this guy is a little bit different. So Ole Miss fans should be honestly excited about a rain game because I think Ole Miss might have the advantage if that becomes the great equalizer with all of the talent. Because I'm going to be honest about this. The Georgia Bulldogs, think of it like a bell curve. And you think of it like an Ole Miss bell curve. Georgia's is up here. Ole Miss is here. And if Georgia plays up there, there's not a dang thing you can do about it. What's going to happen is going to happen. Ole Miss saw that in Athens, Georgia a year ago, how that can look. The trick is to get that bell curve for Georgia down to where you can get them. And you get that through elements, through the rain, through turnovers. And if you can do that, you have a chance to knock off this team, because Brock Bowers isn't walking through that door. There is no Lad McConkey. The running game, there's no Kendall Milton. Carson Beck is struggling because those weapons are gone. This is still a supremely talented team loaded with 4- and 5-star players, but this isn't the 2023 Georgia Bulldogs.
Capitalization off of miscues is going to be Ole Miss recipe. If they can be opportunistic, if there's a tip ball and they come down with it, if there's a fumble on the ground, if it's third and short and they need a yard or two and Lane sends the house and gets a stuff in the run game because Carson Beck's not there, all of these are going to be the things. If there's a blown coverage, a slipped DB, and Jaxson Dart finds the guy on the sideline, those are the elements that if you can get in a crack, you're right. And being all the intangibles are there. At home, Ole Miss is, okay, you're at home, you have weather, you have a more, I'll just say it, Georgia fans, we don't like to say it right now, a more talented quarterback as of right now. And we hate saying that because we thought Carson Beck was going to be the first quarterback chosen in the draft. Those days
who's having a legacy game. If he beats Georgia, this is a legacy game for him.
Lane Kiffin saves his entire season. There's playoff chances. There's playoff hopes. I mean, this is the pivotal moment for Ole Miss, 100%. The tide of emotion is riding high on Ole Miss. Now, we might talk about this a little later and some meta narratives, but Ole Miss fan, that's good for you to feel, and that's good for the players, and that's good for Lane. It just so happens that when Kirby Smart has that narrative, he plays up. It happens. And that bell curve, this is Georgia's red zone defense against teams. The points, yards per play, and the success rate. Against Clemson, 1.1 yard per play in the red zone on defense, 25% success rate. Alabama, 4.4 yards. That's not a passing team. That's a running team. Auburn, 2.1 yards per play. Mississippi State, 4.5 yards per play, 50%. All of a sudden, you play Texas, 0.9 yards per play, 14% success rate in the red zone. Clemson and Texas are the best defensive performances. Why? Because Kirby got them up here and played well. So it is good. Everything is going in Ole Miss's favor on this. It just so happens that's the fuel that this Georgia team feasts on. And you can't deny it's weird. It's bizarre.
Yeah, thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, Locked On Bulldogs podcast. When we come back, we'll talk about the players to watch and the storylines in this game, because having Georgia as kind of a final boss for Lane Kiffin in this 2024 season is just perfect. Anyway, stick around. With Robinhood Gold, you do not need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for that high society. Now, resourceful individuals with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5 APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of the high net worth for the any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Remember, investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place those live bets on the NFL all in one place. The Georgia-Ole Miss game is still, Ole Miss is a 2.5-point underdog against the Georgia Bulldogs, despite the line that should be moving at this point. Georgia should be favored by 5 or 6 points. If you look at just what is going on, the line should have moved. It is not moving. I think Vegas knows something's up. That's kind of my hunch for this game. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view latest play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you placed your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's get back into Thunderdome. This is Clint Shamblin with Locked On Bulldogs. All right, we are back in Thunderdome. Steven Willis from Locked On Ole Miss, Clint Shamblin from Locked On Bulldogs. This Ole Miss Georgia game is going to be absolutely nuts. There's going to be 500,000 people in Oxford. You're not going to be able to walk through the Grove. There are probably RVs with Georgia flags on them in the campus at Ole Miss right now as we speak. This is going to be a really fantastic game. And honestly, if we're just going to be real about it, if LSU and Alabama didn't have the reputation they have, the Ole Miss and Georgia game probably is the better game.
That's exactly right. The trademark kind of logo right there, Alabama LSU is the thing, but this is the marquee game. And dare I say, we thought it was Texas Georgia was going to be the marquee game of the year. Texas has a path to the SEC championship that it didn't matter what happened to the Georgia game for them. They had an easy schedule, and the only thing remaining is Texas A&M, and that A&M game they better win because A&M doesn't look as good as they once did. This right here is make or break for both teams. Ole Miss can, again, salvage an entire season and coast on it. They catapult up the rankings with this. Now you're looking at an SEC team that has a clear path to the playoffs. They win. And so this is the marquee game. I completely agree of the season so far.
Yeah, and it's a situation where Georgia beat Ole Miss a year ago, 52-17. And after that game, Lane Kiffin said, hey, we have got to do this and we have got to do that. And their whole transfer portal plan, going out and get Princely and Monmiel and Walter Nolan, all of those guys were a direct result of the Georgia football game from a year ago. This is like a road in West Texas where you see the headlights coming like 15 miles down the road. Ole Miss fans have been looking at this Georgia game from the moment they walked off the Peach Bowl field against Penn State.
That's exactly right. This has, again, if you look at the makeup of the game and how Georgia prepares for games like this, is Kirby Smart will say inevitably, and this was the bye week. He hinted a little bit. Bye week before Florida, he said we focus on Florida, but it gives us a chance to look ahead to Tennessee and Ole Miss. He made no qualms. He even stated it. And so each time he comes out and say, hey, we play the next team in front of us, play the next team in front of us. He can say that to the media all he wants, but he did let it slip. Bye week, he was starting to prepare a little bit. And this is classic. Kirby, defensive-minded, motivational guy, Jimmy's and Joe's against Lane Kiffin, who's X's and O's genius on offense. I will say this again. Lane Kiffin, to me, he's a head coach, but he's the best offensive coordinator in the entire nation right now. And there's no problem I have with saying that Chip over at Ohio State is not it. Lane Kiffin puts people in positions where he can call his shot if there's a mismatch. Now, Georgia, it's going to be interesting to me because I think they're going to man up again. Georgia doesn't shy away from their strengths. They're going to man up. They might go zone if Ole Miss changes a game plan a little bit. We have both safeties back for the Florida game. I think there may be a little look ahead, possibly, but as cocktail party things got weird. Safeties are back in play for Georgia from the beginning of the game. We're going to have all coverages. Before we went vanilla in that because we had two unproven, untested safeties back there, really young, really raw, no snaps. Now we get Dan Jackson back. We get Malachi Starks. We get KJ Bolden. We get Janelle Aguero. Those are pivotal pieces within this defense. The star position is the most important position. Inside linebacker, okay, maybe, but the star position makes or breaks. If you look at how Kirby set up for this game, this high beams coming at you, yeah, he knows, and he knows an offense like Lane Kiffin. They're buds. They talk. They chat. Can Kirby come up with a system again to beat Lane's X's and O's with Kirby's Jimmy's and Joe's?
Listen, one thing that is very underrated at Georgia is Kirby and the Georgia defense ability to adapt. Lane Kiffin is going to come out and have a fantastic script, and he might go down and score a touchdown on that first drive. He seemingly always does that. I think this game is a two-script game, two completely different things that after the first thing, whenever Kirby adjusts, kind of look and see what's going to happen and have the second script ready to attack that. And then after that, you're going back and forth, and maybe you got a little bit of a headwind to front run a little bit in this game, because I think it will be important for Ole Miss to front run in this game, because the last thing you want to be against Georgia is 3rd and 10 or 2nd and 10 and down by a touchdown. If that is catastrophic for this team. Even when Georgia is playing poorly, you could be down 13-10 in the third quarter, and all of a sudden 2 bad explosive plays created by that defense, and all of a sudden it's a 27-10 game and it's over.
Yeah, you literally just said the script for Florida. That's what was happening. Florida played a fantastic game with DJ Lagway going down. They had power run. They switched things up. They got movement going. It was pulling guards. It was motion all over the place. They worked that power run game, and Georgia prepared for a mobile DJ Lagway who was going to take shots and going to move around the pocket. And all of a sudden you went away from that and you saw success. And then you saw the avalanche. We call it the Kirby Death March. He did this against Tennessee in the rain when Tennessee came to our place. And by the halfway through the second quarter, Kirby looked at the scoreboard and said, I got the points I need. I don't need anything else. Start milking that clock, boys. I know what they're going to do on offense. I know what they're going to do on defense. We have them right where we want them. Just milk the clock. And it was a Kirby Death March from the second quarter into the third quarter, coming out of half, same thing. If Lane Kiffin is able to get up double digits, or if there's 2 drives where they put points on the board, touchdown, field goal, 10 points, all of a sudden you make Kirby. And I think you're right. If coaches came with a red pill and a blue pill with Kirby, saying, okay, which one are you going to take? I'll prepare this other one. It just so happens, I think Lane has an explosive enough offense where it's not too complex of an offense. I think he can dummy it down. That's not a derogatory term, to switch, players progress throughout the week and prepare. If you can subtly change things where now you're running out of open sets and passing out of closed sets, those are the type of small little wrinkles that Kirby does personnel changes. You see the hockey line. He brings in all his defense, and he knows from the second that script comes out, okay, I got him where I want him. If Lane can change the script and turn a page, that's how you beat Georgia. That's what Alabama did. Went up to 28 points because they completely went off script from what Kirby thought, and they got 28 points out of it.
Yeah, I think the goal for Ole Miss is, I know Georgia won the game against Missouri last year, but I think that Missouri game is the roadmap for Ole Miss in this one. And Georgia generally has 1 or 2 death march games that they have during the season, that they're just going to chew whoever they have in front of them up and spit them out. They did that against Texas. Absolutely chewed those guys up. They kind of woke up in the second half against Alabama. And I think that that's coming against the Tennessee Volunteers. I think the Ole Miss game from last year is going to be against the Tennessee Volunteers. So I think what happened before the Ole Miss game last year, Georgia played Missouri. And I think this game is going to look a lot like that. People are going to freak out about it. It's going to come down to the end at a very close game. And if Ole Miss gets the win, and honestly, you're going to tell me I'm crazy for thinking it, but all of the intangibles, if Ole Miss is in the game in the third quarter, in this football game, all of those intangibles are going to come into play. And if that happens, you could see like a 17-13 type victory for Ole Miss.
It's going to be close. I'm glad you said that, Steven. I do think Georgia wins this game, but here's what I'm saying. That 2.5 point spread, I think, is really, really dead on. I would put it at a pick 'em or a 1-point game. Don't think Georgia fans are out here beating their chest saying the defense is going to come stop Lane Kiffin. Here's my full, honestly, belief. I think this defense is elite. I think they're the best defensive unit in college football. I don't think they're stopping Ole Miss from scoring 17. You said 17. I would probably say 20 if it wasn't for the weather. I think Lane's going to put points up. It's going to come down. And you said Missouri game. That Mizzou game was crazy because it took Malachi Starks coming back from 20 yards behind to tackle a running back that was in the open field going toward a touchdown. Malachi Starks saved our season that year by tracking that running back down. They should have won that game. If not for him, that game's done. That's over. We don't win a national championship, I don't think. He saved single-handedly in that game. It was the Jimmies and Joes. Again, Kirby Smart's system. I got more talented players. They got talented players. Now Lane's got his guys through the transfer portal who are insanely talented. Okay, now we're a little bit more even. I still think Georgia has the more talented roster, but it's not as big as it was. Mizzou, it was giant. There was a couple of guys, Luther Burton, Brady Cook. Okay, great. Outside of that, Georgia was way up here. Ole Miss is closer to the roster composition. Not dead close, but closer. Add the intangibles. That's the piece that all of a sudden makes it what Vegas is saying, 2.5 point spread. That's the equalizer. And so to me, it is a coin flip. It is straight down 50-50. So I still think Georgia's going to win. but it's closer than many Georgia fans are willing to admit. You're 100% right, Steven.
Yeah, and Jaxson Dart is probably the better quarterback in this game. And
Completely agree.
The elements, intangibles, all of that. I mean, most every Ole Miss fan that I talk to is unbelievably excited and fired up about this football game. This is likely going to be the first ever football game that is played in front of 70,000 people in the state of Mississippi.
And that's great for football. Y'all, this is why the SEC did what they did, expanded play. This is good watching. It's good for us. We get to consume a better product.
Yeah, it should be fantastic. Anyway, thanks for checking out the Locked On Ole Miss and the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. When we come back, we will give our paths to victory and our final score predictions. Stick around. Guys, sometimes those intimate moments happen when you least expect it, and you always want to be ready to perform with confidence. But you're dealing with ED, and that can be an added pressure. So when HIMS comes in, that's where HIMS comes in. It provides access to treatments to help you stay hard and last longer. You're ready for whenever that moment strikes. HIMS is changing men's health care by giving you access to affordable sexual health treatments right from the comfort of your couch. With doctor-trusted ED treatments, including chewables, hard mints, and generics from Viagra and Cialis up to 95% off, HIMS makes it simple and affordable to kind of get the help you need. Just the process is 100% online. There's no need for those awkward doctor visits. Just answer a few questions and the medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. If prescribed, your medication ships discreetly and directly to your door, all for free. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS has helped many men find the confidence they need in the bedroom, and they can help you too. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon to explore your personalized ED treatment options. Keep in mind, the products mentioned are chewable compounded products that have not been verified by the FDA for safety or effectiveness. Prescriptions require an online consultation with healthcare providers to determine if it is appropriate. Restrictions do apply. Visit the website for details and important safety information. Subscriptions, of course, is required. Prices vary based on product and plan. Take control and feel confident. Try HIMS today and be ready when it counts. All right, let's go back into Thunderdome for one more with our final thoughts with Clint Samblin of Locked On Bulldogs. All right, we are back in Thunderdome. We are going to talk about paths to victory in this game, and there are paths to victory, and both sides have very clear ways that they can win this football game, and it's weird because Georgia is the most talented football team in the country. If Georgia shows up to Oxford and everything's clicking, there's not much you can do. You need help to win this game, period. The end of story. But if you get that help, which Georgia has shown this year, the ability to give, you have a real chance to win this game. And I think the path to victory in this game is obviously Ole Miss gets a lead early. Maybe it's a 10-3 game in the first half. That's the halftime score. For some reason, Georgia's not scoring the ball. Maybe the elements are affecting. It's 10-3, and you're able to go and you get into that third quarter. And once that happens, you get the adjustments of Kirby. They're obviously a second half team. They go down, score a touchdown, maybe kick a field goal. It's 13-10. And then it looks really similar. You might not remember this, but the 2014 Ole Miss Alabama game that they were able to win on a pass at the end and get the stop at the end of the game. I think that this Ole Miss game is going to look really similar to that Katy Perry Ole Miss Alabama game from 2014.
Look, if I'm Ole Miss, I have an ear of Lane Kiffin. This is what coaches do against Kirby Smart that is so foolish. In the first half, take your points. If you get in the red zone and you're on the 15 and it's 4th and 1, if I'm an Ole Miss fan, if I'm a Georgia fan, I'm begging Lane to go for it because we're going to
4th and 1 is a trap against Georgia. It is an absolute trap.
I say bring it all day long. Every time they roll an offense out, I get excited and I stand up because I know what's coming. We're stopping them. If in the first half, take your points, go up 9-0. If you go in the red zone and it's a failure because you didn't get a touchdown, you need those points in the second half. Second half, take a little bit more risk because Kirby will adjust and Kirby will switch. That's when you take your chances. Look at what happened to Kentucky. Kentucky didn't take points when they wanted to. And conversely, in the second half, they punted when they should have gone for it. In the first half, take your points. Second half, take your risks, because the onslaught is coming and you need to go blow for blow. It's kind of like that old axiom. If you're being attacked, don't play defense, play offense, go for it. And if conversely, somebody else on defense, you play defense too. Kirby Smart wants to feel it out in the first half and make adjustments for second half. So fine, play conservatively in that first half. Lane and Ole Miss, take your points where you can get them. Don't take chances. Second half, do it, switch it up. I think that is Ole Miss's path to victory. The second thing that I will say is, if the corners are playing a great game, because Georgia, Carson Beck will give the ball away. The corners will give up yards in certain games. They've played poorly and they've risen to the challenge and they played excellently. If the corners are on and you're taking shots and they're not there, Ole Miss, don't keep taking those shots. That means they're on. Soften them up in the middle, go to the run game, and then take your shots. That's how you beat. I'm giving you the recipe, Kirby Smart's defense. That's what's happening there, because you saw it in Florida. Malachi Starks gets sucked up on the play action. All of a sudden, 40-yard bomb after the interception from Carson Beck, touchdown. There it is right there. For Georgia, the path to victory is I don't know about interceptions. People say, well, Carson Beck has to take care of the football. We've been winning in spite of that, which is crazy. This boggles every football IQ in the world. Yep, there's the bell curve again. It is. It's true. What I think Georgia must do, and Kirby's being forced to do it, we're getting Dwight Phillips, we're getting Nate Frazier into the rotation because Etienne is hurt. Cass Jones needs more rushing. And all of a sudden, the offensive line, I think, is the best offensive unit for Georgia. Now, I think it just so happened to coincide. I don't know, Steven, you tell me. The defensive line of Ole Miss seems like the most predominant unit of that defense. They are good, havoc wrecking.
I think this is the best defensive line that Georgia's played.
I don't disagree. And we played Alabama, who's not very good. They're like something like 11th or 12th in the SEC in rush defense. Texas's defensive line was not formidable at all. Gave Carson Beck had plenty of time. He just got rattled. This will be, and it's coming at a time in which the O-line for Georgia is the healthiest it's been all year. Tate Ratledge back, Micah Morris getting rotation. Ernest Green had his best game so far, giving up no pressures on the left tackle side, and Xavier Truss looks nasty at right tackle. So the offensive line is the best it's been and the best unit going against strength on strength. There it is right there. Can you take shots at the wide receiver? Can Georgia's wide receiver hold on the football? And can you establish the line of scrimmage 2 yards from where it starts? That's Georgia's path to victory.
Yeah. Ole Miss is number one in the NCAA in sacks by about 5 or 6 right now. Georgia's given up 10 on the season. Nobody is really getting to Carson Beck. That's the weird thing about his interceptions. And outside the state of Georgia, he's really struggled. He's only had like 4 or 5 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. So if you can put pressure on him, get him off of his spot, and the weather being inclement, I think that is a recipe. But I think that Georgia is going to try and run directly at Ole Miss's defensive line, the same thing they did last year. I think they're going to try and pick out Suntaran Perkins, number 4 at Ole Miss. He is a 210-pound outside linebacker jack, and Georgia is going to target him, point at him, and he's going to run directly at him. If Ole Miss can hold up against the run game early on against Georgia, that is a big warning sign for the Bulldogs in this game.
Again, everything Mike Bobo wants to do is predicated off the run. Play action Carson Beck is supremely good. The run game established. Kirby Smart will say it's the trenches. Like he is Bill Belichick and Nick Saban. I know nobody likes to admit that, but Nick Saban's the GOAT. Bill Belichick's the GOAT. Bill Belichick said, I'm going to take your best player and I'm going to remove him. I'm going to make you one-dimensional. Kirby Smart makes people one-dimensional. And so if there is success on the run, he's going to keep it going because Mike Bobo is going to set up the pass off of that. And if there's a weakness, if there's a light framed outside linebacker, you better believe Kirby's pulling Xavier Truss out there. Little crack with Urosic. The tight ends for Georgia played their best game against Florida. You might see a little come down, a little H off the line, reach him, and then let Dwight Phillips, who probably gets a lot more play in this game with his speed, get on the outside. We saw this. This is what Kirby did when you go to Jordan-Hare and you play Auburn with Jake Fromm and Stetson a couple times. We got blown out early on going to Jordan-Hare. And so I think Stetson may have had like 9 pass attempts or Fromm had 9 pass attempts in a game there. And we just said, we're going to run it all day long and win that way. He has no problem adjusting. Kirby doesn't like beauty points. So he will win any type he get, ugly, nasty, dirty, 13-9, and he wins. He doesn't care. He's on to the next game. And so if Ole Miss can shut down in the phone booth fighting, that's going to really put him in a disadvantage.
Yeah, Perkins has won SEC Defensive Player of the Week 2 out of the last 4 weeks. So he can hold up, but I don't know if he's faced an offensive line like that Georgia offensive line. So that is something that I think Ole Miss fans need to work out for. What's your score prediction for this football game?
You know, Steven, I came out saying the first 1 to 30 wins, and then all of a sudden I started looking at the weather reports. I started looking at how this game's going to go. I do think it's much more like Tennessee at our place, but we're on the road this time. And so if I was looking at how Kirby does this, I'm going to alter my prediction. It's going to be 21-20. I think there's going to be a late drive. Ole Miss is going to have the ball in the fourth, driving down and get close, and it's going to take lane decision mode. I think Georgia's defense rises to the occasion. Give me 21-20 Georgia, but in a very, very close, hard-fought game.
All right. And for the Georgia Bulldog fans, I'm going to upset you, give you some memories right now. 1989, Georgia at Ole Miss, a game in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, won by the voice on the sidelines. Quarterback John Darnell throws a pass up to Reed Hines at the end. Ole Miss wins the game 17-13. Ole Miss is going to win this football game, and their playoff hopes are going to be alive. Georgia is going to cruise through the rest of the season. They're going to make the playoffs. Texas is going to make the playoffs, and there's your 3.
That is it. I think that is the most likely scenario. Those 3 are the SEC playoff teams. 100% agree with you, Stephen.
All right, Clint, thank you very much for coming on the show. And what do you have going on after the game? How can Ole Miss fans see your post-game reaction after it happens?
Look, Ole Miss fans, if you wind up winning, come on over to the Overreaction Show. We don't hold anything back. We are for fans, by fans, and so we overreact, and we will emote a great deal. And so you will get to rub it in our face in the comments all day long. Saturday after the game, we go right to YouTube. We go right to audio, and we are on there the whole time. It's our favorite episode of the entire week, the Overreaction Special, right after the game ends. Get over there. It'll be posted, and you can mock us relentlessly. And by the way, we stay in the paint. We take it. We will interact with you, and we will give you your flowers. So if you wind up winning, come after us. We're here for it.
And Georgia fans, about 60 minutes after the game, I will be going live with my instant overreaction, and I will be either elated or devastated. You can count on that. And once again, you can play in the comments and let me know how big of an idiot I was for thinking that I could win in the first place. A lot like Chris Marler was on the SEC Squad show that everybody's going to see a little bit later on. That was pretty good. We actually had a discussion about how Ole Miss fans were either Jaces or Chads, but you'd have to watch the SEC Squad show to figure out about that.
Yeah,
but Clint, thank you so much, and good luck this weekend. And if you're traveling around, safe travels, bud.
Hey, same to you.
Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves for offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss sports podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you very much for checking us out. You can check out Locked On SEC for your second listen of the day. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to those podcasts. Exciting news also, you can become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider. It's the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It's our texting program that sends you notifications on anything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is down in the description. For those watching on YouTube, we'll send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.